What if I told you, the person you think you are is nothing more than a story your mind has pieced together from scattered memories? What if I told you that your job, your cherished memories, even the name you call to me, are all just passing clouds in the vast sky of your awareness, appearing and dissolving in an endless flow? Over 2,500 years ago, the Buddha revealed this truth. There is no fixed, permanent self. He called it Anatta, no self. And now, modern neuroscience and psychology are beginning to echo this, showing that what we call the self is simply a temporary construct, stitched together from memories, experiences, and the stories we tell ourselves. Pause for a moment and notice, your mind is always narrating a movie. Who I am, what I've been through, what I want. But if you look closely, these selves are constantly changing. The person you were at age 5 no longer exists. The person you were just 5 years ago is gone too. So who are you, really? Buddhism teaches that we are like a river, never the same water twice. Every moment, everything changes. Yet, because we cling to the story of me, we feel fear, anxiety, and pain when life shifts or when death draws near. Science now explains that the sense of self is simply a function of the brain, like an app running on a computer, constantly merging data from memory, emotions, and the senses to create a version of you in the present moment. It's useful for survival, but if you mistake it for absolute truth, you get trapped in the fear of loss and the constant feeling of not being enough. Here's the miracle: when you begin to see the self as just a story, you stop being controlled by it. You can still play your role in the story of your life, but you no longer forget that you're simply playing. And when that happens, a vast space opens up, free from comparison, jealousy, and fear. This isn't just a lofty idea, it's an experience you can taste right now. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and ask, if I let go of every label, who am I? You might discover you're not just a name, a job, or a story. You're the spacious awareness that holds all of these experiences. And that may just be the key to ending your deepest fears and finding the peace you've been searching for all along. The you've been protecting might not exist. Have you ever stopped and wondered, what if everything I believe about myself is just a story my mind made up? It sounds crazy, but it's one of the most profound truths humanity has ever uncovered. Think about it. Who do you say you are? You might answer with your name, your age, your job, your hobbies, or a few meaningful memories. But are those things really you? Or are they just temporary pieces your mind has stitched together to create an image called me? Over 2,500 years ago, the Buddha taught that the fixed, solid self we cling to, the ego, doesn't actually exist. He called this Anatta, no self. From his perspective, life is nothing but a continuous flow of phenomena, thoughts, emotions, memories, and images, arising and dissolving like clouds in the sky. No single cloud stays forever, and the sky itself doesn't truly belong to them. Today, neuroscience and modern psychology are arriving at a strikingly similar conclusion. Studies of the brain reveal that the sense of self is simply the result of information processing. The brain constantly collects data from memory, the senses, and emotions, then weaves them into a coherent narrative. We hear this story, believe it's real, and forget that it's just a story. So what does this mean? It means that much of what makes you afraid, anxious, or unhappy comes from protecting something that isn't actually real. You fear losing your reputation, but reputation exists only in other people's thoughts. You fear losing a relationship, but the person you love today is not exactly the same as they were yesterday. And you yourself are changing every single moment. Think about the you from years ago, your childhood, your teenage years, or even just a few years back. Did that version of you have the same thoughts, feelings, and dreams as you do now? Clearly not. And yet, we still call all those different versions by the same name, me. So who are you, really? In Buddhism, This isn't just a philosophical puzzle, it's a doorway to freedom. When you begin to see that the self is only a temporary construct, life feels lighter. Without a rigid ego to defend, you become more open, more forgiving. And less caught in the endless game of comparison, jealousy, and fear. Science backs this up. People who are less attached to their sense of self tend to be happier and more compassionate. Studies on meditation show that observing thoughts and emotions as passing events, instead of identifying with them, reduces stress, improves mental health, and deepens our sense of connection with others. You can start exploring this right now. Sit quietly, close your eyes, and ask yourself, if I let go of every label, my name, my job, my past, my future, what remains? You may notice a vast, open space within you, a space in which all experiences come and go, but which itself is untouched, unbroken, and free from fear. And when you live from that space, life becomes lighter. You still work, love, and face challenges, but without the heavy burden of a me that must win, must be right, or must maintain a perfect image. Perhaps that's the secret both Buddhism and science want to share with you. When you see the self for the illusion it is, you lose nothing, you simply set down the cage you've unknowingly been carrying your whole life. And in that moment, you feel more free than you ever imagined possible. Understanding the self in modern life. If you ask the average American, who are you? The answer will usually start with a job title or social role. I'm a doctor. I'm a software engineer. I'm a mother of 3. In the US, the self is often defined by what you do and what you've achieved. Your business card, LinkedIn profile, and framed diplomas on the wall are seen as proof of who you are. In a culture that values individuality and accomplishment, the self is tied closely to independence, capability, and the ability to shape your own destiny. There's nothing inherently wrong with this. In modern life, having a clear sense of who I am can guide your goals, fuel your motivation, and help you build relationships. But there's a hidden side to it. If your identity is built entirely around your roles, achievements, or public image, then when those things change or disappear, you can feel lost, even empty. Imagine a successful entrepreneur losing their company, an athlete suffering an injury that ends their career, or a parent whose children have grown and left home. When roles change, the self they thought was solid can suddenly collapse. And in that moment, the question, who am I, becomes both painful and urgent. Buddhism offers a radically different perspective. Instead of seeing the self as a fixed entity, it views it as a temporary collection of elements, thoughts, emotions, memories, the body, and consciousness, all constantly changing. None of these elements, on their own, is your true essence. Many Americans are used to the idea that, I control my own destiny. But Buddhism points out that the you making choices is also shaped by countless external conditions, your environment, genetics, culture, and past experiences. Even your personality and preferences aren't entirely yours, they're the product of countless intertwined influences. A common Buddhist analogy is that of a car. A car only exists when its parts, wheels, engine, frame, are assembled together. But none of the parts alone is the car. In the same way, the self is simply the result of the temporary coming together of body, mind, memories, and circumstances. In modern American life, the pressure to keep the self strong, appealing, and successful can be intense. You're expected to appear confident, competent, and always moving upward, even if inside you feel tired or uncertain. Social media amplifies this pressure. You post the best moments, the proudest achievements, and then start to identify with that carefully curated image. Buddhism invites you to take a step back. Instead of defending a fixed image of yourself, observe the self as a process that's always changing. Today you might be an employee, tomorrow an entrepreneur. Today you're happy. Tomorrow you might feel sad. No single state defines your entire being. This doesn't mean giving up your goals or ignoring reputation and achievements. It means seeing all of them as temporary parts of a much larger journey. When you understand this, change becomes less frightening, and the end of a life chapter feels less like a personal death. There's a saying I love. You are not your story. You are the one who is watching it. In Buddhist terms, that one who is watching is pure awareness, the presence that remains even as thoughts, feelings, and circumstances constantly shift. When you live from that awareness, you can fully engage with modern life without being trapped by a narrow definition of me. Interestingly, science is beginning to agree. Mindfulness researchers in the US have found that when people observe themselves without judgment, they become less attached to their roles and achievements, while feeling more connected and more at peace. In a society that constantly urges you to build your personal brand, realizing that the self is only a temporary collection can be a profound liberation. It gives you permission to change, to experiment, to fail, and to start again, without feeling like you've lost yourself. And perhaps that's one of the greatest gifts Buddhism can offer to modern life, the reminder that you are not limited by any definition. You are bigger than every label, every role, and every story you've ever believed. The trap of the illusory self. The ego is a clever storyteller, and it loves to cast you as the main character in a drama that never seems to end. It tells you who you are based on what you own, how much you achieve, and what others think of you. But here's the problem: when your identity is built on shifting sands, every change in life feels like a personal earthquake. Think about it. In modern society, so much of our sense of self is tied to our job title, our financial status, or the admiration we receive. We introduce ourselves with what we do, not who we truly are. I'm a lawyer, I'm a teacher, I'm a business owner. And the more we invest in that image, the more fragile we become, because the ego clings to things that are temporary. This is why the illusion of self so often leads to anxiety, competition, and envy. If your worth depends on staying ahead, you will always fear falling behind. If your identity depends on others' approval, you will live in constant worry about losing it. And if your sense of self is built on achievement, every setback will feel like a personal failure. Consider this example: someone loses their job. On the surface, they've lost a source of income. But for many people, the loss cuts far deeper. It feels like losing themselves. That's because their identity was wrapped around their role. Without the title, without the daily validation, they feel invisible. Buddhism has long warned of this trap. The self, it teaches, is not a fixed entity. It's a fluid collection of thoughts, emotions, and memories that arise and pass away. When we mistake this shifting stream for a permanent me, we suffer. We fight change. We cling to the past, and we fear the future. Science is now echoing this truth. Neuroscience shows that there's no single self-center in the brain. Our identity is an ongoing process, a mental construct that can dissolve as quickly as it forms. Yet the ego resists this reality, because if the I is just a story, then who is in control? The irony is that letting go of the illusion doesn't erase you, it frees you. Without the constant need to protect a fragile identity, you can meet life with openness instead of fear. You can see success without arrogance, failure without shame, and change without panic. When you understand that the self is just a passing arrangement of experiences, you no longer have to defend it so fiercely. And in that softening, something remarkable happens. You begin to taste a peace that can't be taken away, because it was never dependent on anything outside of you. Science backs up the Buddha's insight. For centuries, Buddhism has taught that there is no solid, unchanging self inside us, that what we call me is just a constantly shifting stream of experiences. Now, modern science is beginning to echo this truth. In neuroscience, researchers have searched the brain for a single location where the self resides, a fixed center of identity that controls who we are. But they haven't found it. There's no little me hiding behind your eyes pulling the strings. Instead, they've discovered a network of processes, sensory input, memory recall, emotional responses, and countless micro-decisions, all arising and fading like ripples on water. Psychology tells a similar story. The self we feel so strongly attached to is largely a mental construction, a narrative stitched together from our past experiences, cultural influences, and personal interpretations. This narrative isn't permanent, it changes as our memories shift, our moods fluctuate, and our perspectives evolve. Every thought, every emotion, every sensation you've ever had has come and gone. They rise, they pass, and they are replaced by the next moment's experience. Even the identity you have today is not the same as the one you had 10 years ago, or even yesterday. Yet we cling to the illusion that beneath all these changes, there must be a constant, unchanging I. Science suggests otherwise. Just as the Buddha taught over 2,500 years ago, the self is not a fixed object but a process, an ever-changing dance of body and mind. And when we truly grasp this, something powerful happens. Our grip on fear begins to loosen. If there is no solid self to defend, there's no need to take every criticism personally. If there's no permanent I to lose, the fear of death softens. We can begin to live with more openness, more curiosity, and far less anxiety. It's not about erasing your personality or becoming nobody. It's about seeing through the illusion that you are just one fixed thing. You are fluid. You are movement. You are the sky, not the passing clouds. When science and spirituality meet in this understanding, a doorway opens. It leads to a way of living that's lighter, freer, and deeply at peace with change. And that's exactly where this journey can take you. Why the ego is tied to suffering. At the heart of so much of our human struggle is one simple pattern. The tighter we cling to the idea of me, the more pain we experience. In Buddhism, this is called upadana, attachment or clinging, and it always leads to dukkha, which means suffering, dissatisfaction, or unease. The ego doesn't just want to exist, it wants to be important, secure, and untouchable. But life, by its very nature, refuses to let anything stay that way. Think about it. When you believe your worth is tied to your career, a job loss doesn't just hurt your finances, it feels like you've lost yourself. When your identity is built on your reputation, even a small criticism can feel like an attack on your very existence. When your sense of self is wrapped around relationships, a breakup isn't just the end of a chapter, it can feel like your entire foundation has crumbled. The ego operates like a fragile glass sculpture. We polish it, protect it, and show it off. But we live in constant fear that it could be cracked at any moment. That's why we get defensive when someone questions us, jealous when someone outshines us, and restless when life doesn't go according to our plan. The more we believe the story of, I am this, or, I must always be that, the more we suffer when reality doesn't match the script. Buddhism teaches that this suffering isn't a punishment, it's simply the natural outcome of clinging to something unstable. The self we protect so fiercely is not solid, it's a flowing, ever-changing process. Thoughts come and go. Emotions rise and fade. Even the cells in our body are constantly renewing. There's nothing wrong with having a personality, dreams, or preferences. The problem arises when we mistake them for something permanent. When we loosen our grip on the ego, something remarkable happens. Life's changes no longer feel like personal threats. A loss becomes just a change. Criticism becomes just feedback. Success becomes just another passing experience, enjoyable, but not something that defines our worth. Without the constant need to defend a fixed me, we find a kind of spaciousness inside. And in that space, peace has room to grow. The truth is, the ego will never stop wanting to be secure, that's its nature. But you are more than your ego. When you see that the self is just a collection of stories, patterns, and memories, You stop taking life's ups and downs so personally. The waves will still come, but without a rigid identity to protect, you can flow with them instead of being crushed beneath them. That is where freedom begins. A Buddhist story that inspires letting go of the ego. There's an old Buddhist story about a wandering monk who carried a heavy bag everywhere he went. Inside the bag were strange objects, old stones, broken cups, scraps of cloth. When asked why he carried them, the monk simply replied, "These are mine. They have been with me for years. I can't just throw them away." One day, while crossing a river on a small boat, the monk accidentally dropped the bag into the water. At first, he panicked, reaching, grasping, trying desperately to pull it back. But the current was strong, and the bag sank quickly out of sight. For hours, he sat on the riverbank in silence. His hands trembled. His chest ached. And yet, as the sun began to set, he felt something strange, a lightness in his body, a space in his breath. Without the bag, the path ahead seemed easier. His steps felt free. He realized he had not only lost a collection of useless objects, he had also lost the burden of his own attachment, his own ego, tied to those things. The Buddha often used simple stories like this to point to a profound truth. We all carry our own bag, the identity, pride, and labels we think define us. We cling to them out of habit, fear, and the belief that without them, we are nothing. But the moment we let go, even if it's painful at first, a new kind of freedom appears. In our modern lives, this bag might not be made of stones or broken cups. It might be the job title we cling to, the opinions we fight for just to be right, the resentment we refuse to release, or the self-image we polish to impress others. We tell ourselves these are who we are. And yet, deep down, we know they are only temporary, like leaves floating on a stream. The lesson is timeless. Freedom is not found in adding more to who you are, but in dropping what you no longer need. The river of life keeps moving forward, whether we hold on or not. And sometimes, the greatest act of courage is to simply let the bag sink, and walk on without it. Meditation techniques to see through the illusion. One of the most profound ways to see the illusion of the self is through the ancient Buddhist practice of vipassana, often translated as insight meditation. Unlike other forms of meditation that focus on calming the mind or visualizing a peaceful scene, bring your awareness to your breath, and allow every thought, feeling, and sensation to pass before your inner eyes like clouds drifting across the open sky. There is no need to stop the clouds. No need to chase them, no need to label them good or bad. They appear, they change, they vanish, just like every moment of your life. Why does this matter for seeing through the illusion of self? Because as you sit and observe, you start to notice something remarkable. None of these thoughts or feelings are you. They arise on their own. They fade on their own. And in between them, there is a quiet, spacious awareness that is always present, always untouched. That awareness is not the ego self you've been defending your whole life. It's something deeper, boundless, and free. You don't need hours each day to begin. Try this. Find a quiet spot. Sit comfortably, spine straight but not stiff. Close your eyes. Feel the breath moving naturally, no need to control it. Notice whatever arises. A thought about yesterday? A worry about tomorrow? Simply acknowledge it, thinking, remembering, worrying. Then let it drift away. Return to the breath. Not as an anchor to hold on to tightly, but as a gentle reminder of the present moment. Stay for 5 minutes. That's all you need to begin. Over time, you can extend this to 10, 20, or 30 minutes if you wish. The magic happens not in emptying your mind, but in seeing clearly how every mental event is temporary, impersonal, and not the solid self you once believed in. With daily practice, you may notice that life feels lighter. Criticism hurts less. Loss still stings, but it doesn't break you. Praise feels nice, but it no longer defines your worth. As the Buddha taught, freedom comes not from trying to perfect the self, but from realizing there is no fixed self to protect in the first place. It's about regaining your freedom, choosing how you respond, rather than reacting on autopilot to protect a fragile self-image. Here are 3 habits that can help you shift from ego-driven living to a life led by awareness and compassion. 1. Listen more than you speak. Most conversations today are like battles for attention. We speak to prove our point, to assert our identity, to make sure others see us a certain way. But when you truly listen, without planning your reply, pause and replace that judgment with curiosity. What's really going on for them? What might I not understand yet? This not only reduces conflict but also expands your compassion. You realize that everyone, just like you, is carrying unseen burdens. Living without being ruled by the ego doesn't mean you'll never feel defensive, jealous, or superior again. It means you'll recognize those feelings as passing clouds, not permanent truths. Over time, these small shifts, listening, gratitude, and curiosity, become powerful anchors, grounding you in a life of humility, connection, and inner freedom. When the ego loosens its grip, you stop living in a constant state of proving and start living in a state of simply being. And in that space, you discover a quiet joy that no achievement, no approval, and no competition can ever give you. The benefits of letting go of the self. When you begin to loosen your grip on the idea of a fixed, unchanging self. Most of us spend our lives carrying the heavy armor of the ego, the constant need to prove ourselves, to be right, to be liked, to be admired, to be someone. One of the first benefits you'll notice is inner peace. Without the endless mental chatter about who you are, how you're perceived, and whether you're measuring up, the mind naturally becomes quieter. You don't have to try to force it into silence. The noise simply fades when it's no longer being fed by the ego's demands. This calm isn't fragile. It doesn't depend on everything going right in your life. It's steady, like a deep river beneath the surface. Another benefit is reduced stress and anxiety. Many of our fears stem from the ego's survival instinct, the fear of losing status, control, or approval. But when you realize that you are not limited to your job title, your reputation, or your achievements, those threats lose their power. Losing a position or being misunderstood no longer feels like an attack on your very existence. Life's ups and downs still happen, but they no longer shake you to your core. Your relationships also transform. Without the ego constantly defending its position, you become a better listener. You stop needing to win every argument or prove that you're smarter or stronger. You can be genuinely happy for someone else's success without feeling diminished. This openness fosters trust, connection, and mutual respect. People feel safer around you, because they sense you're not relating to them as a rival, but as a fellow human being. Perhaps the most profound shift is a deep sense of connection with the world around you. When you stop seeing yourself as a separate, isolated entity, the boundaries between you and others begin to soften. You notice the subtle interdependence of everything, how your breath is made possible by trees, how the food you eat is the result of countless hands and lives, how your emotions are shaped by those around you and, in turn, shape theirs. This isn't a sentimental idea. It's a direct experience of being part of the vast web of life. And here's the beautiful irony: by letting go of the rigid self, you don't become a hollow shell. You become more fully yourself, but in a way that's flexible, open, and responsive to the moment. You laugh more easily, forgive more quickly, and adapt more smoothly. Because you're not stuck defending a fixed identity. In the modern world, where so much pressure is placed on personal branding, achievement, and individualism, letting go of the ego might seem like a radical act. But it's also the doorway to a lighter, freer, and more connected way of living. When you're no longer imprisoned by the story of who you think you are, you're finally free to experience life as it truly is, vast, unpredictable, and filled with wonder. Remember this truth. You are more than the story you tell yourself. The labels, the roles, the identity you've built over the years are just a layer, they are not the essence of who you truly are. Beneath the surface of, I am this, or, I am that, lies a presence, a consciousness, a stillness untouched by titles, possessions, or other people's opinions. I invite you to try a simple but powerful experiment. Live just one day without letting the I take the lead. That means, when someone compliments you, don't immediately think, I'm good. When someone criticizes you, don't rush to defend, justify, or protect the me. Instead, watch those moments as if you were an observer. See the emotions rise and fall without becoming them. Notice how much space opens in your mind when you're not constantly reinforcing your identity. You might be surprised to discover that without the weight of constantly protecting your ego, life becomes lighter, more spacious, more real. You start to see the world not through the lens of, how does this affect me, but simply as it is, raw, alive, and deeply connected. That shift can transform how you relate to others, how you handle challenges, and how you experience peace. And if just one day of living like this feels liberating, imagine what a lifetime of it could bring. This is the essence of Buddhist wisdom, not as a religion you must follow, but as a practical way to live with clarity, compassion, and freedom. If these ideas resonate with you, subscribe to this channel. Here, we explore Buddhist wisdom in a way that speaks to the heart and applies to modern life, so you can bring peace, presence, and deep connection into every day you live. Together, let's step beyond the ego's story and discover the boundless space of who we truly are.